The more spokes we have to the wheel of this project, the greater the chances that we'll get the funding that we want, and the greater the chances that we'll be able to provide the services that we want to provide for our community. So that's changed our scope and our focus a little bit, and that's what we want to share with you today, is what is that data, and then how does that affect what you all think, and then how do you think we should move ahead from here? Because that's what we really want to get out of today, which is why the surveys are so important and which is why the documents on the A4 sheets are going to be so important. We really want to know, what does our community think about this?
Services has been engaged with over the last year is looking at services for older people, because in our area we've got an ageing population. And 51% of our population is over 50, and only 29.9% is aged 18 to 49. So already we're starting to get, like Kate was saying, this big umbrella of older people, only a thin handle holding it up. And if we break that down further, we've got an increase in those aged 60 to 69 by 61%, an increase in those aged 70 to 84 by 32%, a decrease in those aged 25 to 34 by 30%, and a decrease in those aged 34 to 39 by 17%. So radically moving down and radically moving up. So we're quite concerned about what that meant for our communities, and we had a number of ideas, but really thought, well, we actually need to go to our communities and find out what that population of older people actually want. 93% said they wanted to be able to stay in their own home for as long as they can, which is actually the government vision as well. That's great, and that's all very well though, but we've got to have the infrastructure to support that to happen. So out of that we had 100% said that they needed more improved ways to network, 83% said they needed Meals on Wheels, and then actually Meals on Wheels came up as like within the next 5 years, within that period. That's the time that people were saying they need it. So it gives us a bit of a time frame around how we need to think about providing those services. 83% said they would need home help care, that's personal home help care in the home, so that's cleaning, personal body care, those kinds of things. 83% said home help in the house and garden. And then there was 83% transport assistance, local support and contact, ongoing improvement of medical facility and available services. So we've really started to build up a picture of what our people were saying that they needed in order to be able to stay in their own home. 79% said that if they can't stay in their own home, they want to be able to stay in their own community, have a supported living space so that they can be supported for their healthcare needs. If they need palliative care and they want to die in their own community, that's possible. They can die in their own community with their other community members. If they need respite care, which is a growing need, then they can have that, their families can have that, because caring for your people as they are ill or aging or have disabilities is a pretty stressful situation. So we need houses to get those working age people to be able to stay here, to be able to sustain our communities, to be able to spend money within our communities, to be able to have kids on in our schools, and in order to get them to stay we need to have jobs here as well. So there are, as we can see, that there will be a little bit of an industry around our ageing population, so it's not a bad thing, it's an opportunity to actually help our communities to be sustainable, but also in some other ways we need to think about how can we actually create employment and how can we create jobs here so that people can stay, because we've got in our northern area we've got a social deprivation rating of 8. So there's a thing called the social deprivation scale, which goes from 1 to 10. 10 being the most deprived areas, and we've got a deprivation rating of 8. A decrease of 9% in the number of people in the labour force. Nearly 11% fewer people employed, 15% fewer in full-time employment, and a 26% increase in those unemployed. So we need to have jobs in order to be able to have a sustainable community. And how can we do that in a way which fits what our community is saying that they want and need through statistics and through that long engagement with the Health Trust around the health facility? So what kind of fits with that, and what sort of fits with the overall ethos of our communities up here, which are tend to be geared towards that well-being, whether it's across sort of environmental, health, community well-being.
Education industry, so that we can actually bring people into the community who are going to provide jobs and income for our local residents. And so one of the things that we do from a service provision perspective is that we have students come to the practice and interact with the community, and they bring with them funding, and they need accommodation, and they need to buy things, and they learn about what living in a remote rural place is like. And so we've spent a couple of years gearing up our capacity for students, and next year we're going to have students for 10 months of the year instead of only a couple of months. If we want to be able to keep our people in our community and have them as a valued member of our community and potentially a part of the need that the industry needs to build to be able to provide for, then we do want to have these young people coming in who are going to access training and knowledge about what it is to be part of the Northern Coromandel, and hopefully some of them will want to stay. Some of them will hopefully think, great, let's come back and work here, which would always be really nice, but also they bring with them income into our community. So as service providers and through the Health Trust, we really want to promote the teaching aspect of the facility and how it does that. So we need really good internet services, we need really good communication with the hospital. The Waikato DHB is bringing out the whole virtual consultation concept, where instead of having to drive 3 hours down to Hamilton to see your specialist, they would like you to be able to talk to your specialist on your smartphone or your computer at home. So we have a video conferencing unit in Colville.
And that enables them to link up with other video conferencing units around the country, which can be used for training and or meeting diagnostic services. So for example, when I was at the Independent Living Trust, I could access training in Hamilton, which then saved me 6 hours driving, all those kilometres, that cost of petrol, and it saved me from leaving at 6 o'clock in the morning and not getting home till 8 o'clock at night. More if you're living further north, of course. We've tried housing at Social Services Collective. When we were in the hall, there wasn't the space for that. Now we're moved over the road, there's still not the capacity for that. The Health Trust has tried housing that. They don't have the space for it either because they're working at capacity. The school has currently got that facility there. They don't have the space for it either. So we've got this incredible resources in our community that we don't have the space to use, and it's got a whole plethora of uses that it could be being utilised for across the board.
And so part of what we want to do is try and work to maximise what we do have, and then work out how can we attract more people into the community who might want to come to Colville to learn about how to do something that we're doing, and or might be based in Hamilton and want to stay in Hamilton and be able to beam in and see what's happening here from a teaching or a training perspective. So there's lots of options both ways if we have a good system.
So we've talked a bit about that education training centre and a way to start to create a bit of local industry as well as building up that sustainability thing. So again, that's another bit of accommodation, whether we can manage that throughout our community or whether we're needing to look at some other kind of accommodation aspect for that. So, and Kate's mentioned that that's actually putting money back into the activity, into the community in a number of ways. Then we're saying if we develop that kind of resource, we need to make that work for our community in other ways as well. So if we have a targeted education training centre there, that gives us an increasing number of people here who are doing online study, but it gives them the capacity to come to a place where they have the resources, there is power, there's scanners, there's printers, there's photocopiers, there's reliable internet, there's whatever they need. There's a network of people that they can then be working with in terms of studying. We've got the capacity to be able to offer other training courses there so that our young people can stay here and be engaged in training here, because we've got a really high rate of people in our area with no qualifications, higher than the TCDC statistics, higher than the Waikato statistics, and less of us have a school or post-school qualification. So enabling us to have a workforce that's also geared up for working is also a really crucial thing.
And those ones that do go away and learn these fabulous skills want to come back, and they want to come back for something to do, but there isn't a job and there isn't a house. So those things are things that we want to try and find an answer to, so that those people that have been away and trained with these amazing skills and got all these valuable things they can bring back to the community, that we actually can house them and have them here and grow something more positive, so that the things that we've talked about here that are difficulties and challenges, we want to actually turn those into a positive thing that can develop an industry for our community.
Currently in the northern part of the community, there is no targeted facilities for youth. So if we're wanting our young people to think that they are valued members of our community, we're not currently having any kind of way of signalling that to them. Have options, become engaged, have places that they can develop as leaders and develop leadership skills, and know that they are those really valued members.
And we want them to be here and be able to be here and gain skills and knowledge and resources to stay. So it's a big part of how we move forward.
So one of the things in terms of facilities, particularly when you're talking about community buildings and facilities and you're wanting to go to the funders to get the large sums of money for these things, that the funders looking and saying, okay, so if we're going to do this, have you done a feasibility study? And so that's usually one of the first things that they want you to do. So the point of the feasibility study is it's basically about collecting all of the information, all of this kind of stuff that's been talked about here is all part of that. The information that you provide in terms of your ideas about what's needed in the community, what you think of this idea of the facilities, whether or not there is already existing facilities in the community, all of those things go into figuring out, is this project needed and is it doable, and is it something that the community is set up to do. And I mean, you've got the trusts, for example, they've set up their partnerships, all of that leads into it. So essentially my job is to write all that up for the trusts, and then they can use that to go back to the funders and to take those next steps, particularly in terms of funding, not just, because the other thing that the feasibility study does is it also pulls together information from these 4 workshops as well as other people that we talk to and other information we gather, so that it builds up a picture of what the community is saying that is needed.
This is our ideas. This is how we've got to these ideas, and now we're wanting to check in with you about how you're feeling about these ideas.
So in terms of the surveys, some of the information from that goes into the feasibility studies, and so into the feasibility study. And so I pull that information together. I don't use your names or anything like that. There is a part on the survey where you've been asked if you would like to put your name down to continue to be informed about the project. So that stuff goes to the trusts in terms of your contact details. So that's about being informed, maybe being involved in advisory groups to help them progress the project. So just to sort of let you know that I don't use people's names in the report that I write.
So we're now creating a database around this project for people that want to be receiving further communication. And also, as Ruth touched on, the advisory group, so we're going to continue to meet with people who have an interest in specific areas. So you might have an interest in youth, and we're certainly going to be meeting with youth about that. And you might have an area in housing, or you might have skills in a particular area where, so if you can indicate that on there and you're happy to come and have further conversations with us, we're very grateful.